Hello dudes, dudesses, and denizens. I'm debuting a new feature. If it gets popular, or popular as I'd like to say it, then I will turn it into its own channel. I would certainly like to hear your thoughts. This new feature is called Rewriting Movies. There are tons of movie review channels. We don't need another one. When I was a network dude, I read more than 1,000 scripts and provided thousands of notes, none of which were appreciated. A lot of bad movies have infuriating plot holes. My goal is to provide concrete alternative solutions that would have fixed these movies. Many movies fail because, well, we just don't give a shit about what's going on. This could be because the characters are uninteresting, but most of the time it comes down to what I call the consequence, tension, premise vector. The smaller the consequence of a decision, the less tension of an anticipated encounter, the less involved you, the viewing audience, is going to be. I've added premise because it's a comedy outlier. In comedies, often a high concept premise can carry a bad script. And I use the word vector because it makes me sound smart. Soon it will become an industry term, I guarantee it. Remember, you heard it here first. I'll be providing a bit of critiquing, a bit of review, but mostly offer some suggestions as to what they could have changed to make things at the very least work. And when I say the script sucks, I don't mean the writer or writers suck. You have no idea what's involved in writing anything creative, and you have no idea what changes the studios or producer forced on the writers. You have no idea what was left out of the edit. You have no idea what the director did. So let's get on with my very first Rewriting Movies review, Bill and Ted's Face the Music. Okay, it starts with a terrible opening narration, presumably by Bill and Ted's kids. A narrated opening is the first sign of a bad movie. Ironic voiceovers like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a different thing altogether. Clearly, someone wants to make sure the people who have never seen any of the previous Bill and Ted movies get caught up. This could have happened because of test screenings. Who knows? I get it. The opening is supposed to show us how far they've fallen. Then we had the very first scene, the wedding scene, and we get even more exposition and backstory. Don't want to leave anyone behind, do we? Worst, it was a family wedding. Consequence, tension, premise vectors are really narrow. These could have been widened if Bill and Ted were the hired band at a South Asian wedding. I'll bet you're smirking already at the sound of that. Now, I'm not saying that they should have done this. I'm just pointing out how the consequence, tension, premise vector works. The idea of Bill and Ted playing at an Indian wedding already sounds funnier, but I'm not suggesting that that's what they should have done. It seems that the job of this scene was to introduce Bill and Ted's wives, Elizabeth and Joanne, and introduce their daughters, Billy and Thea. Then Bill and Ted went on to introduce the wedding song, another attempt at trying out the song to save the world, apparently. Ted says in some brilliant dialogue, "Don't know if this is going to be the song that unites the world, but it might." My guess is not. This was terrible plotting. Let's say the wedding scene was the best option. I don't think it was, as we don't give a shit about Missy or her new husband. At the very least, it could have set up the upcoming marriage counselor scene. Have Bill and Ted hang around the food table and argue with their wives. And maybe they say, it's about time that they quit trying to write this magical song and that they should grow up. And the kids would chime in with their everlasting trust in their dads. This would have added tension and bring in some family dynamics, especially as it related to their daughters. We would get a better idea of their relationship. In fact, why not have Bill and Ted divorced and Elizabeth and Joanne have come out gay, and we're at their wedding. That would have raised the consequence, tension, premise vector for sure, but then you would have lost the wife characters for the rest of the movie, which frankly would have been fine as they contributed nothing. This was an underwhelming, uninteresting start to the movie. The playing of their song here had no consequence, tension, vector of any significance. The joke was that it was so weird that it would freak out the wedding party. Again, it was family. They already knew how weird Bill and Ted were and how bad the song was going to be. No consequences or tension. Who cares? The man-child stuff should have been key in this film, but it wasn't mined for any worthwhile gags, unfortunately. Frankly, I thought their song was pretty good. And it showed that they had musicianship and talent that was inexplicably ignored for the rest of the movie. "Have to keep it going till we unite the world," said Ted. In the first movie, neither of them could play their guitars with shit, but here they were quite accomplished musicians. In script writing, we call this the smoking gun. We've been given a hint of something that will be played out later, but it never was in this movie. They went for the cheat to get the quick laugh. The trouble is, cheats catch up with you and you stop believing in the integrity of the movie. Don't Mess with the Zohan is a fantastic example where no matter how ridiculous it got, and it got ridiculous, it never went for the cheat. I love Zohan. Then there was the couples therapy scene. Fine. Unfunny man-child shtick. Moving on. More exposition back at the garage. I didn't see the point of not opening the movie with them at their very lowest. So Ted sold his Les Paul, he reveals to Bill, and that's the low point telling them? Are they talking about being low, but we're not seeing it? Show, don't tell, damn it. Just as an alternative, why not have Bill and Ted completely out of the music biz? That would be low. Have them working at a grade C meat processing plant where the only gig their agent can get them is "Where Are They Now" exposés. At the 13-minute mark, Kelly from the future, Rufus's daughter, arrives in an egg pod to take them to the council. Their daughters view this bit of magic from a window and are completely nonplussed, like they see this every day. "I wish we could help them out, but how?" they say. Bill and Ted meet the great leader, played by the wonderful Holland Taylor. The writers gave her a joke that actually should have been the first scene. "1 month ago, you played at the Elks Lodge at Barstow, California for 40 people who were there for $2 taco night." Wouldn't that have made a more logical first scene? We find out that they have to now write this magical world quantum saving song in 76 minutes or something, or the quantum chaos will reign and the earth will collapse. And strangely, Kelly says that the council only detected this issue recently. What? So why not just spirit Bill and Ted from the Elks Lodge gig and then tell them the council needs them again? Why set it up as something that they have failed to do all this time when it was just recently discovered? Make it a classic quest or a mission movie. The boys are at their lowest ebb and have little confidence that they can pull this off. That's a seriously high consequence tension premise vector. Suddenly, we're actually rooting for them to succeed. 20 minutes in, we get the central shtick of the movie. They will visit themselves in several futures to get the song that will save the world. Funny idea, but ultimately this only works if this is all a complete and utter failure, and they find out that they have to rely on themselves. The best writing comes when the heroes, the protagonists, create their own problems and then are forced to solve them. They kind of weakly solve it in the end, but who cares? So their first foray into the future, 2 years hence, whatever, have them encounter loser versions of themselves who are playing at some shitty joint. But didn't the great leader tell us that their lowest moment was 1 month earlier? We saw Bill and Ted cleaned up at the wedding, playing some cool music, and then they regress. Further, 2 years later, the gags are just not making any logical sense. And I know things don't have to be logical for this kind of movie, but this is just a bunch of bad sketches strung together. Great line from their second encounter with their loser counterparts. Why don't you go write it yourself instead of stealing it from us? Yes! This is what a good movie would have done. I really like the great leader's alternate just-in-case plan of killing Bill and Ted by sending a robot to kill them. The fact that the robot could manifest its own futuristic time-traveling phone booth pod was very clever. Unfortunately, the robot should have been really scary, with an insane amount of comic carnage. But it wasn't. And later on, they pull a gag cheat that didn't work. So Kelly goes back to their homes to try to find Bill and Ted and protect them from the death robot. This is where the girls come up with the idea to use Kelly's time-traveling egg to assemble a band. Why? Do they know their dads are on a mission and that there is a time limit and that they need a band and not a frisbee team? They announce to us here that they are samplers. But if they're sampler DJs, then why do they need to get original musicians? They could have just sampled from the entire freaking Spotify library. Going back in time to assemble a band made no sense. Yes, they know their dads have been trying to write a big, hairy song, but they don't know about the deadline. What would have made sense is maybe a short scene where Bill and Ted and their daughters join forces, actually talking to each other. One of the girls could have said, hey, when you were in high school, you went back in time to bring back historical figures to save your school project. We'll go back in time to bring back the best band together to save the universe. So it would have tied everything together. Something like that would have tied everything together, and the daughters' knowledge of their dad's past would have been revealed to the audience, and it would have made them a team after the same goal, kind of Lord of the Ringsy kind of thing. The girls went and visited Jimi Hendrix first. Fine, but for crying out loud, make the guitar playing sound like Jimi Hendrix. E7 sharp 9 chord at the 6th fret, for crying out loud. How hard would that have been? It didn't sound like Hendrix at all. That really bothered me. While Billy and Thea were grabbing Louis Armstrong, Mozart, Ling Loon, etc., I was thinking the girls are cute, but instead of retreading the band idea, maybe they figure the greatest musicians of all time had an unpublished song that could have saved the universe. Ultimately, the movie was not about the song, but the band, which made no sense. The movie was about the song. It would have been nice if they foreshadowed Wild Stallion's breakup with Death and set up a smoking gun that they needed, him to, get back in the band. And of course, here's the money shot. We've seen this in all the trailers. This is probably the reason why we're even interested in watching the film, because seeing Bill and Ted in latex muscles with all the tattoos does look really good. But the scene, honestly, isn't very funny. And the question is, do you place their lowest moment in the middle of their time travel journey? I can understand why they made that decision. But that's not mutually exclusive. I think you can still start them at a low ebb and find that it gets even worse, which might even be funnier. And here's the final moment in the future where they meet up with themselves as nice, kindly, old, wrinkly men. And I didn't quite understand what happened here, because in the previous scenes they were playing for laughs, they were really horrible, terrible people. But that's all gone now, and and now they're nice old people. And I guess the point of this is that they get to hug with themselves and hug each other and have a nice moment. And then Bill hands them a USB stick with the song that's going to save the Earth. But if these guys are from the future, it would have made more sense if Bill had handed over some kind of memory stick that would not play in any device, that when Bill and Ted came back to the present, they couldn't use it because it wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to play it in anything. And that would have been logical. I apologize. Going back to hell to find Death was not interesting. It would have been more fun if Death was touring with Yes. John Anderson begging Death not to leave the group. Robot arrives and just kills everyone in Yes. That would have been very funny. More cameos, damn it! The hell scenes were universally unfunny. Being in hell did not seem to affect the historical figures. There's stupid, folks, and then there's just plain bad. And the scene where Bill and Ted's daughters convince Death to rejoin the band was excruciatingly bad. Great performance by Bill Sadler as Death. Anyway, they return, they assemble the band, Bill and Ted and their wives zoom about the whatever ether and time travel and give instruments to everyone in the world, in the past and in the future and whatever, and the world is saved. It was kind of a Ghostbustery moment, but I didn't care by this point. The ending for this film would have been really tough to write regardless. Look, I'm sure they argued about it a lot and had several endings. Well, that's it. I would honestly not bother watching this movie. If you like my rewriting movies idea, drop me a note. So, till next time, thank you, denizens. So long.